All right, everyone. Hello. I'm Dr. Wade McKenna. Welcome back to the Zero Downside podcast, as always brought to you by moabtexas.com. Today, we're going to go through a topic that I think is worthy of exploration because yesterday in the clinic, got asked the question by another physician who is in regenerative medicine side of a practice and as an internal medicine specialist. And his question was mostly about everyone's talking about exosomes. In my mind, what would be the biggest difference between a really high exosomal solution or talking about an actual stem cell itself? I think it's pretty easy when you just structurally break down what is an exosome, because it's very difficult to compare an apple to an apple. And what's inside an exosome is different. Depends on the size of the exosome. An exosomal solution is literally just a nanoparticle secreted by the stem cell. And that particulate size is defined in different articles and by different companies as different. So if one company defines an exosome as everything that's spherical, round, and between 0.25 nanometers and 2.4 nanometers, in one solution, are you going to have a lot more exosomes than if that company defines it as a sphere between 0.35 nanometers and 1.6 nanometers? Yes. So the best way to increase the amount of exosomes you have in your solution is just change your definition of it. And that's what is done a lot. So I think you got to be really careful what someone's calling an exosome, first of all, right? So just the definition of it is still kind of unroofed a little bit, as far as you can kind of look down and kind of call it what you want that benefits you the most. And unfortunately, that's what's done a lot. What's inside an exosome? First of all, it needs to be spherically coated and lyophilized, and it's secreted by the cell. Are there a lot of places that would even count cell fragments or half of that spherical thing as an exosome? Certainly. What's inside an exosome? Is it the same thing every time? No. So it's what the cell secretes. And if you've followed any of what we've done on the stem cell science, any of the stuff published, we've always talked about this microvesicle of support or cellular secretions, or what's important about a stem cell isn't the what it becomes, it's what it secretes. What it secretes is exosomes, and it's packaged material. A lot of times when the stem cell is secreting with its secretory peptides, proteins, mitochondria, it's an exosome. So a lot of the dumping that the stem cell does into the diseased tissue may just be transferred messenger RNA. It may be exosomes. It may be the mitochondria in that exosomes. It may be just peptide, protein, growth factors. All of those are secreted by the cell. All of them are secreted by the cell as an exosome. It's just the way it's packaged. So I think when you talk about is taking a lot of exosomes the same as taking stem cells, or what's the real difference? Well, the stem cells work on the tissue by exosomal secretions. But when you give someone an exosome, you're giving them a one-time shot of that growth factor, peptide, protein, messenger RNA, mitochondria. And because it doesn't have a target, it may not really know what to do. And once you metabolize it, it's gone. When you put cellular volume in a wound, the stem cell can continue to stay metabolically active for months, not a one-time injection. So if you get continued cellular secretory protein, peptide, growth factors, exosomes, it seems like the length of time that you're going to see that increased benefit would be longer. And that's pretty intuitive. And sometimes intuitive is okay. Sometimes intuitive is right. So when you talk about a live cell that's going to continue to secrete those exosomal proteins, that exosomal mass, I think that the stem cell itself is a much more reasonable way to accomplish the goal that we're usually trying to accomplish when we're injecting biologics into a wound, a muscle, a tendon. And the overall length of time and the more reproducible benefit is because we're not putting the exosomes and telling the body what to do. The stem cell can secrete its exosomes based on what it sees going on in the human body. It can be selective in what it secretes. Every stem cell in every part of the body doesn't secrete the same exosomes based on, it depends on what your trauma, what the body's moving those cells to a wound to do. If you put the cell there, it can make those decisions for you. It has plasticity. It has an ability to conquer the foe based on what is it fighting. You know, my joke is always, you don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight. That kind of is my thinking with exosomal secretion sometimes. You may be right. That may be exactly what the body needed for exactly the problem you were addressing. But if you're doing it with stem cell volume, it's much more likely to be able to help navigate the storm. It is sensile. It knows. It gets responses from the body that drive it to action, and it is much more likely to function as an organ, meaning sensile. It can feel what's going on. It senses the need. It disrupts the inflammatory cycle, and it gives the body whatever it needed to help heal that pathway. So I think the stem cell is much more pluripotential in what it can secrete, and the exosomal proteins, peptides, whatever they're calling when you give someone an exosomal injection, I think that can be a very nonspecific. I don't think it's harmful. I just don't necessarily think it's best bang for your buck if what you're depending on what the problem you're trying to solve. Hopefully that's a little bit of at least muddy in the waters for you on the stem cell versus exosome argument. I think that when you know what an exosome is, it makes a lot more sense that you need to open up each individual exosome before you count it as a billion exosomes are a good thing. What were those billion exosomes of? What cells did they come from? How big were they? Were they all particles? Were they all spheres? Were they all lyophilized? Because just the definition is still up in the air. That's not the case with the bone marrow aspirate concentrate or the mesenchymal stem cells from an autologous source. So again, thank you for your attention. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and hopefully this part of the playlist on this question we've answered. And again, thank you for your attention.